Hey everybody, welcome to G4G on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about some of the new characters that are confirmed and rumored to be coming to Marvel Strike Force, and we are going to talk about their representation in some other Marvel games, because apparently some people are like, Elsa who? Star-Lord what? Like they're not as familiar with some of these characters, and some people are even taking the MSF community to task for like, well, you only know what's in the movies and shows and you don't know what's in comics, blah blah blah. So admittedly, I'm not a huge comic fan myself. I admit I have read House of M because I know it was so incredibly pivotal in Marvel's, at least, well, more than just the mutant sphere. It was throughout the entirety of the Marvel universe, but to me, I always associate House of M more with mutants than anything, even though Captain was in it and not looking too good, sort of similar to old Cap at the end of Endgame. But let's go ahead and jump right into it, especially with one of the bigger ones that people are wondering about, and that is Elsa Bloodstone. So when Elsa first dropped in Marvel Avengers Alliance as her first game, she had the big bouffant haircut over there, and it makes her look like very 60s mod culture. And then she showed up in Marvel Future Fight with pretty much the same outfit, which was considered modern, but a more modern haircut and an overall just better attractiveness to the face. In Marvel Avengers Alliance, she was a blaster with even stats, which is something you didn't see too much in Marvel Avengers Alliance for blasters. She had a passive of Blood Gem Choker. Takes reduced damage from magic attacks and effects. Removes one negative magic effect every round. Restores some health after recharge. Removes harmful status effects after the recharge. And Monster Hunter. Counterattacks enemies with Hunter's Mark. Hunter's Shot causes bleeding and pain to the target and applies Rising Up to Elsa. She was female, obviously, and did carry metal because of the guns. She was associated to the British Invasion, the Defenders, Lady Liberators, and Legion of Monsters, which will also come into play in Marvel Future Fight. She is also in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. Elsa Bloodstone was only a toddler when her father abandoned her with her mother. Elsa didn't learn why until many years later when she heard of his death and came to settle his estate. Learning that her father was nearly a mortal monster hunter, Elsa inherited a choker with a portion of her father's blood gem, which granted both Elsa and her father incredible powers which she used to train. Wow, this is getting very run-on. Take her father's mantle as a monster hunter. Elsa is now an expert when it comes to the supernatural and things that go bump in the night. Curiously, a recent run-in with the Beyond Corp has caused Elsa to question the truth of her own past. She had double tap where she fired both shotguns, so it was 1-2, as you can see, 2 hits. One of her bigger abilities, Tea Time, which was a quick action that was subtle. She applied Hunter's Mark to an enemy, gave herself Rising Up, and the other quick act, or the other item on this multifunction, was Gravedigger. She hit somebody with a shovel, but it was actually a quick action, which was interesting considering it was an attack. Adamantium, so it did not bypass shields, but it did bypass the defense stats of the victim. And Near Fatal, defeats enemies with less than 20% health. Greatly damages bosses with less than 20% health. It's so that you didn't get that near insta-kill because the boss was low. Blazing Boomstick was pretty much her opener. All enemies got Soulfire, which removed their buffs. And they take magic damage, and it counts as burning for things that exploit it. Despair removes and prevents resurrection and most healing effects. This is bordered, so you couldn't get rid of it. And then you had the Slayer on her level 9, Blessed Bullets, so it did increased damage to undead and vampires and targets with Hunter's Mark. It ignores avoidance and incorporeal effects, so if the person was phased, it would still hit them, and that's also because it's magic. Ethereal Strike ignores avoidance and or incorporeal effects again, and of course finest hour deals extra damage when they're buffed by buffs. So that is pretty much how she worked in there. She had a lot of team up bonuses, including alias lists, because she went by her own name. Anti-precog, so she was one of the people against precognitive justice. Big guns, big mouth, bloodlust, because she did bleeds. Heroes from the Braddock Academy. British Invasion, Debbie Downers, because she has a very dour personality. Distaff counterpart, she is a female counterpart to a male person, which is her dad. Doom's Avengers, which I don't know that much about that one. Fully Armed, hot stuff, I'll drink to that. Legion of Monsters, Monster Hunters, passing the torch. Heroes with red hair, because she's redhead, street level. And suffragettes, because she was part of the Lady Liberators. So if we look at Braddock Academy, you'll see that she is tied to the Braddocks of Captain Britain, Spitfire, and Union Jack. She's part of the British Invasion, so she gained some points with Black Knight, Blade, Faiza Hussein, Psylocke, Spitfire, Union Jack. Doom's Avengers, Elsa Bloodstone, Valkyrie. I don't know what this tie is, and it's probably exposing a weakness in not knowing the comics. I'll drink to that. These were people in-game who quaffed something, be it a potion or whatever. Legion of Monsters, so she has that with Ghost Rider, which will be coming up in a little bit. Morbius in Satana. Monster Hunters, she adds, it's kind of the British Invasion, but she adds Hercules and Kraven, Dr. Voodoo, Angela, and Doctor Strange. Passing the torch, that's just kind of, you know, when somebody takes the reins of a character from a previous character, like X-23 with Logan, Wolverine, J-Thor, Jane Foster with Thor, Bucky being captain, etc., etc. Redheads, street level, suffragettes, the Lady Liberators, so she gets it with Black Cat, Black Widow, Colleen, Invisible Woman, Elektra, Enchantress, Faiza, Patsy Walker, which is Hellcat, Medusa, Misty Knight, Captain Marvel, Scarlet Witch, She-Hulk, Spider-Woman, Storm, Thundra, Tigra, and Wasp. So that's who she was in Marvel Avengers Alliance. She was meta for a while. There was a line of characters that were all protected by Hafe, Heroic Age Iron Fist, to do their jobs. It started with kind of about anybody, and then it became Molly or Null, which was Luke Cage in his Null outfit. And then when Stamina got changed and nerfed Molly, and Null had his moments where he was really in the meta, and then he would fade out a little bit, and then they would change him, and he would kind of come back. Null kind of always hung around with Iron Fist still, but the lineage of the Molly protected by Heroic Age Iron Fist went into Amazing Spider-Girl, who got nerfed for being too strong and was not nearly as effective, and then it dipped into Elsa for a little while, but then there was so much anti-magic going on in the game, Elsa just couldn't hang anymore, so a lot of the protected by Heroic Age Iron Fist or protected by Hafe characters died out, and Elsa was one of those ones. But she was a very good blaster, very powerful, at least for the use of magic, which was hitting a lot of phase people, which had become popular towards the tail end of the game. In Marvel Future Fight, she was Speed. She was a regular character. Mostly you got her from Chaos Tokens and Chaos Chess, which are not PvP tokens, but the other ones, the purple ones. And she started off in Modern, which was pistols and her shotguns. And then she went into the Secret Wars Marvel Zombies one, which favored more the heavy modern shotguns. Still Speed. and then eventually topped off with the Monsters Unleash look, which has a horrible, horrible thumbnail. I mean, one of the absolute ugliest representations of Elsa. I mean, that is, it's just harsh, very, very harsh over here, and it builds on the Marvel Zombies look a little bit, where she keeps the modern shotguns, or she goes actually back to the pistols, but our modern gets a little bit of a midriff thing going on, and changes the hair. Now, at the time in which she was meta in Marvel Future Fight, I do believe it was the Marvel Zombies outfit, and she had it a little bit in Monsters Unleashed, where she was speed meta, more specifically a speed queen, but then she was replaced by Kid Kaiju, who took over as the big speed person of the day. In Marvel Future Fight, beautiful and feisty Elsa Bloodstone is the daughter of the famous monster hunter Ulysses Bloodstone. So she kind of plays out as a Lara Croft character to a certain degree. Though ignorant of her father's career, she was plagued by dreams about vampires and other creatures of the night. Shortly after Elsa's 18th birthday, Ulysses died, left his Boston home, the Bloodstone house, to Elsa and her pregnant mother, along with all of its contents and the millennia of adventures. Adam, the caretaker of the house, helped indoctrinate Elsa into her true heritage, offering her the mystic Bloodstone choker, which bonded with and empowered Elsa. Elsa and her mother elected to remain in the Bloodstone house, turning it into a curiosity shop run by her mother, while Elsa continues exploring the family vocation of monster hunting. So this is why you are seeing some ties to a possible Halloween event. Now, there has been some criticism levied for Marvel Strike Force that maybe there could be other characters that would be better for Halloween. However, I think it's because they just don't know Elsa very well, nor do they know how powerful she could actually be. Where's her synergy going to lay in Marvel Strike Force? I don't know. They definitely seem to tie people to groups, and I don't know that she currently has a group in-game that she can fit in, because there's no other monster hunters in the game. However, with the fact that we have another confirmed character that I think people are going to know much more, she's probably going to have a team up with him, and that is Ghost Rider. So Ghost Rider needs very little introduction at all. Everybody knows Ghost Rider. Everybody knows Nicolas Cage. People are quite familiar with his comics and all the movies, so Ghost Rider really needs no explanation. In Marvel Avengers Alliance, he had his classic look and was a scrapper. In Marvel Heroes, he had tons of outfits, including a What If outfit when he was considered part of the Future Foundation. So in Marvel Avengers Alliance, he was a scrapper, which means he would get 2 attacks when attacking an infiltrator and then anybody else afterwards. So kind of a brawler character is what he was pegged as. But when he was given his worthy outfit, he retained his scrapperness and also had a variant that was a blaster. If you're not familiar with Marvel Avengers Alliance, you're like, well, what the fuck is a worthy and why is it him? Marvel Avengers Alliance didn't follow the canon of the Marvel Universe to a certain degree, so they took the worthy from Marvel Avengers Alliance and gave those names and looks to other characters rather than the original. So whereas you would maybe have Juggernaut as Kurth and Hulk as Null, it went to Spider-Woman and Luke Cage. So all the characters, the worthy, were changed up a little bit, but we'll talk about classic. So he had Eye of Judgment, applies Sin to any enemy that attacks. It reduces defense. Sin was a stacking debuff that reduces defense by up to 7 times, so it could eventually get up to a 70% defense reduction. Hallowed vulnerability. He was vulnerable to a hallowed weapon because he was considered a demon. Infernal contract. He was immune to burning and he has the damage from non-magic attacks. 50% chance to survive being KO'd from an attack. Obviously, he carried metal. That was for Magneto and magnetism, basically. To save his adopted father, Johnny Blaze made a pact with the demon Mephisto. In return, the motorcycle stuntman would become Mephisto's emissary, the spirit of vengeance, the Ghost Rider. With his living chains, hellfire, supernatural strength, and Nicolas Cage face, Ghost Rider is the main of all others who cause pain. So he had Damnation Chains, which was 2 hits, Swing Swing, Melee, Fire and Shadow did Sin, and Path to Damnation, which was an escalating debuff that caused Dark Void when it first went out, then Poisoned if somebody had Dark Void, and then Soulfire if they were poisoned. If you gave somebody Dark Void before Ghost Rider hit them, then he would jump right to Poison on this, and Dark Void would stay on him. Penance Stare, you kind of knew that would be in there somewhere. Guaranteed hit, a high crit, ignored defense, inner reflection where it consumed all sin to do extra damage, and it was considered a psychic attack, which is one of the highest forms of attack in MAA in terms of not being able to block it and everything. Highway to Hell, which is he reared back on the motorcycle and let the front tire do most of the damage. It was a wheelie. One enemy got melt armor, but then it splashed Soulfire to everybody else, which is a mechanic we have in Marvel Strike Force. And then Burnout, which was a quick action. He gained Spirit of Vengeance, which is gains vengeance equal to the number of sin effects on all enemies, but didn't consume it, and it would increase his attack. So if you were going to Penance Stare somebody with a lot of sin, you'd burn out first, and then buff yourself, and then go after that person with Penance Stare. In Marvel Future Fight, he had his classic look. He had a 70s classic look, which is considered pretty iconic for him. And he had the Inhumans Attilan Rising look. This is definitely his best outfit in Marvel Future Fight. Unfortunately, he's not really been particularly meta, although the Infinity Warps character that is in the game, which is a blend of Ghost Rider and Black Panther, teams up very well with Ghost Rider and Robbie Reyes. They make for some good buffs on each other. And he is a solid universal character. He's just never really particularly been meta, and he's farmable in story. After being bonded with the demon Zarathos, daring stunt motorcyclist Johnny Blaze was bonded with the demon Zarathos, we said that, okay, and gained the ability to transform into the Ghost Rider. A skeletal being with a flaming skull, he uses his supernatural powers to protect the innocent. So that's Ghost Rider. That's clearly a huge fan favorite, and I think it's more the classic one than Robbie Reyes, but to be honest, I don't really ever hear people shitting on the Robbie Reyes version of him either. Up next, we have Beast as a character that is going to appear within Marvel Strike Force. In Marvel Avengers Alliance, he was perhaps one of the most polarizing characters in the entirety of the game's history. Modern Beast was a generalist, which means he had no weaknesses, he had no strengths. He existed outside the universe of, the setup where a blaster was better than a bruiser, who was better than a scrapper. Marvel Strike Force doesn't have that, but Marvel Future Fight and Marvel Avengers Alliance had the whole class thing, the rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock kind of thing going on. Well, as a generalist, he was mostly nowhere. He tended to be billed as slightly more passive than some of the other mutants. So he had this thing called Bleak House. After an enemy attacks, he has a chance to make all allies' next attack a guaranteed critical hit. So that was a buff on the team. Catch 22. Gains a bonus to attack on any turn that Beast does not attack. This effect goes away when he does. So he had some abilities that were not considered an attack. If he did that, essentially like passing a turn, he gained a buff to when he finally would attack, and that comes with War and Peace, Grapes of Wrath. The jungle, it was stealthy, which means it was an invisible strike, and it would generalize an enemy, which removes their class bonus. If he did War and Peace, he read from a book, and one enemy, if they attacked, would get an immediate counterattack from him. So similar to the shield guy who attacks anytime you attack a member of the shield team and Nick Fury and everything. It's very, very similar to that, except it was not considered an attack. He just buffed himself. The Grapes of Wrath. All allies got combat awareness so that they would counterattack the next attack or area attack, and rising up, so they would gain random beneficial effects, similar to what you would see with like the AIM characters. Special properties would deal extra damage against targets that are protecting, so that would be taunt. In Marvel Strike Force terms, one enemy would get off balance so that they couldn't counterattack, and they would also be cornered so that they couldn't protect. So this is similar to the Disrupted in Marvel Strike Force, except it was specific to those buffs. And his bio, the name Beast may describe Dr. Hank McCoy's bestial exterior, but a man of rare wit lies behind the fur. For the times when his genius intellect isn't enough, Beast relies on his hand senses, superb agility, and unflagging courage. In Marvel Future Fight, he has his classic look, his Age of Apocalypse look, where he is a villain, and the Uncanny X-Men, which is new. Gotta say, in Marvel Future Fight, he's generally nowhere. He is considered a buffer with one of his abilities, and then when you use that ability and it buffs the team, which is Stars and Garters, you swap him out, and then he's rarely ever seen again. Not meta, not a particularly powerful character. He's just nowhere. But in Marvel Avengers Alliance, why I said he was so divisive is he had an alt called the Horsemen of the Pestilence. This is where Apocalypse made him one of his 4 horsemen, and he had one of the worst, by some people's standards, debuffs in the game through a passive, and it was called Paradise Lost. Suppresses most effects that prevent or remove debuffs from both allies and enemies. So if he was on the field and you got a debuff, you were not able to clean it off. He suppressed the ability to clean off debuffs. Debuffs can be consumed, so like Ghost Rider could still consume Sin and do the extra damage, and it would go away, but you could not clean your debuffs. And that's why Pesty was so divisive when the game was out. Heart of Darkness still did Generalized, was still stealthy, but now it did Nanoplague, which was the game's Disrupted at the time. At the Mountain of Madness, mind controlled people and caused them to fumble, so if they did manage to attack you, you would counterattack them. However, most of the time they would attack members of their own team. Mask of the Red Death was a quick action that affected the entire enemy team with ISO Contagion that would tick down until it exploded in a shower of debuffs on the person. ISO 8 Contagion, passed back and forth whenever you hit somebody. So let's say he hit the enemy Cyclops, and then Cyclops hits Beast back. So now the debuff is on Beast, except it's in stage 2. If Beast attacks somebody, he then passes the debuff back to his victim, and if it hits, that person now has the ISO 8 Contagion, and when their turn comes up, it ticks down on them and it explodes. So it was risky. You could accidentally wind up with your own team getting the debuff back on them, but if all things worked, it went the enemy, back to you, back to the enemy, explode. And then you had Jekyll and Hyde, which exploited taunters. It exploited debuffs. We have that mechanic in Marvel Strike Force. It made people unable to counterattack and unable to protect. So that's what Beast did in those 2 games. Way, way more powerful in Marvel Avengers Alliance, especially what was called the Pesty outfit. Ridiculous game changer. The single biggest game-changing character in Marvel Avengers Alliance history, even after Quicksilver just made it so infiltrators were not ever taken to PvP. That eventually stopped, but Pesty never stopped. There was agent gear that could emulate what Pesty did and cause the same debuff, but Pesty was able to be used from literally the moment he was released until the game died in 2016. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him in Marvel Strike Force. I predict it could be things like he buffs the team. Maybe he could turn invisible to emulate him being very much in control of himself and stealthy and agile and acrobatic. Will probably come across as a controller, is my guess, which will build up to the wit or the intelligence. And it will probably be that look, the belt and underwear look, rather than X-Pants, is my guess over there. So we have dealt with Elsa, we have dealt with Ghost Rider, and we have dealt with Beast. Now, both games also play host to Hela, with the exception that in Marvel Avengers Alliance, Hela was always a villain and was never a playable character. That was her sprite in Marvel Avengers Alliance well before the movie. The game was dead by the time Ragnarok came out, but she was a villain-esque several times in the game, and then she is also in Marvel Future Fight with a classic look, sort of Loki-esque, and then the Ragnarok look, which is what everybody sees in her today. She was a tactician in Marvel Avengers Alliance, similar to a controller. She was Asgardian, which meant she was immune to burning, chill, poison, radiation. She was relentless so that she couldn't be stunned. She credits in this game, in this canon, Loki with her birth, quote-unquote. There is no love between the god of mischief and the goddess of death. In fact, Hela cares not for her fellow gods and only wishes to rule all over the Nine Realms, which of course the movie took into account. She appeared in Spec Ops 24, and then she also appeared in Spec Ops 30 and some other missions in Spec Ops 30. She had Cloaked in Death, reduced accuracy on the next attack for enemies, Skittering Darkness, Fatal Follower, Raise an Army, which was her Drugor, Corruption, and then Flee when she was scripted to flee, and that was her look. In Marvel Future Fight, she did enjoy a not meta, but she is a strong universal character, especially when the Thor Ragnarok uniform was released. She is farmable in 12-1. She is considered a supervillain. Hela is the goddess and ruler of Asgard's undead realms. Holding the power of life and death over her kinsmen, she often conspires against Odin and his rule. She gets some pretty good team-up bonuses with Loki and Thor. She summons ads in this game that do tank, and she is mostly undead-based with like throwing daggers and jumping up in the air, doing Nightsword Stab, Merciless Queen, Nightsword's Glow, Goddess of Death. So she could probably show up in Marvel Strike Force as a summoner and could summon some Draugr out on the field, like Star-Lord's Ravagers. Maybe Blaster. I mean, the Asgardians need some love in there. I mean, Thor really has no home. The classic Avengers team up doesn't do it for him. Unlike a lot of the other games, we don't get uniforms in Marvel Strike Force, but it would be nice if Thor could have a uniform that makes... I think maybe what we'll do is we'll see a Thor rework, and we'll get Hela fairly close after that. And there'll be some meshing with Thor and Loki, and then Hela will come in. And then it's also predicted that Heimdall could show up and we've dealt with him in several games also. So Heimdall in Marvel Avengers Alliance was basically his Thor movie 1 look. He was a bruiser, which would be the protector type in Marvel Strike Force. He never really taunted though, but he was Asgardian, so he was immune to these debuffs. Farsight, most enemy attacks cannot be stealthy. Chance to negate preemptive counterattacks. So what he could do is if somebody on the enemy team was going to block an attack and counter it, Heimdall would stop that, which lets his teammate make the counterattack. His ability to see everything and see stealth, even though it's exploited several times in the movies, could potentially make him very good against stealthers like Black Widow. Similar to the way that Hawkeye has those random chances to arrow somebody who's stealthy, I think potentially they can give Heimdall either a passive where nobody can stealth around him, or maybe an ability that he can activate that like buffs the team and also reveals stealthy enemies, or reveals stealth from all enemies. Could be an interesting way to go. So we had Hope Fun, which was a straight up sword swing. Vigilance, which was a chance to prevent enemy attacks. All enemies were off balance and winded. He had Uru Blade, which was all enemies getting hit with a big like sonic wave from the melee slash that he did, wide open, tenderized, staggered, and then Yallarhorn, which made the field look like the Bifrost Bridge, and everybody got Sound the Alarm, which was agile, focused, fortified, and strengthened. So it was a guaranteed set of buffs. Heimdall over in Marvel Future Fight just has his more Ragnarok hobo look. Not really anywhere, not particularly meta. I built him, but then never really touched him. This Heimdall is an Asgardian with unmatched powers of perception, being able to see and hear across time. It was for these abilities that Odin named him the Guardian of the Bifrost. Heimdall also possesses all abilities typical of Asgardians, including strength, speed, stamina. He's able to project an avatar of himself, which often aids in communication and as a warrior. Heimdall is particularly skilled with blade weaponry, so maybe a summoner again, but I doubt it. He could further flush out the Asgardians, which would then give us 4 of Thor, Loki, Hela, and Heimdall. I don't think we would get any Warriors 3, but there was a rumor that potentially the last of them and the last wheel in the cog for a full-on Asgardian setup, unlike, say, Elsa and the Monster Hunters, there is a rumor that Sif could potentially be one of them. So she had a classic look and she had a modern armor look, which was more like the movie. Look, I'm going to be extremely male over here for just a moment. In Marvel Avengers Alliance, Sif was the bomb when it came to her legs. Her animations, she's got the gams. I mean, those are just meaty, muscular, athletic lady legs that just nice and toned and muscular. She was well known in the game. There were certain characters that were like known for the butt, like Spider-Woman and everything like that. Sif was known for the amazing legs, and it's probably why more people use the classic outfit than the modern armor, because the legs go away. She was a scrapper, which means she got bonuses on infiltrators. The uniform gave her scrapper and bruiser or protector. Brawler would be the Marvel Strike Force characterization. Thrust, leaping slash, so she did bleeds. Leaping slash, which was tenderized, increased damage from slashing. Inspire courage, which gave defense up to the team, and she gained a guaranteed critical hit on her next attack. And then flying sword weakened people and ravaged them. She would eventually get an ISO that she had a chance to join in on enemy attacks. And then she had another ISO that gave the berserking, which is the Inspire Courage. It would allow her to inspire courage on more than just herself. Everybody would get it. That's the honed edge part of it. In Marvel Future Fight, there is the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. look, and then there is the modern look, which you could say is more classic. Of course, in the movie, she was played by the gorgeous Jamie Alexander. Um, Sif possesses the conventional attributes of an Asgardian woman, a goddess. Like all Asgardians, she's extremely long-lived, but not as immortal as the Olympians. Superhumanly strong, the average Asgardian female can lift up to 25 tons. Sif can lift 30. Immune to diseases, resistant to conventional injury, Asgardian flesh and bone is 3 times denser than human tissue, contributing to Asgardian superhuman strength. And in Marvel Avengers Alliance, the Asgardian warrior Sif is sister to Heimdall and close companion to Thor. She is a relentless warrior and has fought as Asgardian champions numerous occasions. Sif is more closely tied to Midgard than any other Asgardian save Thor, and has come to love some humans. Her sword is able to cut through the barriers between dimensions. So she really wasn't anywhere in Marvel Avengers Alliance, even with a alt, which gave her tempered steel. All attacks were guaranteed to be critical hits for the first 3 rounds. Not removable. This could not get removed. It didn't change anything else over here. And in Marvel Future Fight, she's, again, just nowhere. She's a physical combat. She was farmable. Not that much to write home about. So it's going to be interesting to see her. I think she is one of the more weaker ones that is being rumored or data mined or announced and everything. I feel overall that Beast could potentially be weak combat-wise, but maybe a very good buffer, like a rescue type character. Who would be the 5th Asgardian out of Sif, Thor, Loki, and Hela? Considering Hela's the odd man out, being, well, Loki's the villain. So it would be 3 to, let's see, Heimdall and Thor, Sif, Loki, Hela. Yeah, okay, there's all Asgardians. One of them would be a villain, but then again, they have established that trend with the Fantastic Four having Namor. And Namor is considered a villain in that game, but is considered a hero in Marvel Future. No, actually a villain in Marvel Future Fight. But it's, you could have a 5-on Asgardian team over there. I think Sif will be one of the weaker ones of it, potentially, since she's been portrayed as having a shield in the movies. Maybe she would be the protector. I think she might be the brawler, and Heimdall might be the protector. Hela would be a blaster, maybe a controller, if she was able to do summons. So I'm concerned Beast is going to be weak. I'm concerned Sif is going to be weak. I think Heimdall will have very interesting passives that nobody else will have. I think Hela's going to be pretty big, especially if she does summons. Elsa Bloodstone is going to sneak up on people. I think she's got the ability to be a very strong blaster. But I'm concerned she has nobody to go with. There maybe's been some thought that you get a Moon Knight because he was in the picture. Blade is another one that might be rumored out there, but we don't have any monster hunters. And if we go back and look at if we look at her over here and we take a look at who she has teamed up with, or who she has the bonuses with, it just, I don't know. I can't really see who she's going to go with, because we're going to ignore Aliasless and Precog. Big guns, it's just people who use guns. She's not going to get a team up with Deadpool or anything. Bloodlusts are just bleeders. But the Braddock Academy, none of these people are in the game, although glory be to us if Spitfire ever joined. British Invasion, Psylocke, but you're not going to take Psylocke away from the X-Men. Blade maybe could show up, but then it's only 2 people. You're not going to have Debbie Downers, not going to have Distaff Counterpart. You're probably not ever going to wind up seeing Valkyrie if we aren't hearing about her now. Then it would be an Asgardian overload. And again, that's only a 2-person team. It's not fully armed. It's not hot stuff. It's not I'll drink to that. Legion, this is the big one. Legion of Monsters. So she might get Ghost Rider, and its potential she'll get parked with a team up with Ghost Rider for a little bit. But then those two are going to be very isolated. Who will they go with? But you know what happens. I mean, Miss Marvel's considered an inhuman, and she really only has Quake in that category. So I don't know who else they're going to give Ghost Rider and Elsa over there. Passing the torch, you won't see redheads. Street level, I mean, maybe city. Maybe you should get some city stuff over there. But you can see there's Moon Knight, which some people are wondering. And we should see Blade. Blade should have been considered street level. And Suffragettes, you're probably not going to see any kind of a team up there. Although we do have Black Widow. We do have Invisible Woman. Maybe they would throw Colleen in as a defender in the future. Maybe Misty Knight, but probably not. There's Storm and Scarlet Witch. Maybe she would get an all-girls team up with some of these, but probably just going to be teamed up with Ghost Rider, and then who knows after that. Remains to be seen. So there you go, guys. There's some of the new characters that are going to be coming to Marvel Strike Force, and some of how they are represented in games prior to this. And you know, with Elsa, you do have Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, in which she's represented there, gun-based over there too. So hope you enjoyed the video, and that it sheds some light on some of these characters in case you just really weren't that familiar with them. Peace out, everybody.